One of the reasons why I had them come out here today is I think it fits really well with what we're going to be talking about today in Revelation 12. You guys are part of a war. You're part of a battle, and the video talked about that. There's a spiritual battle going on in these students' lives every single day. And in Revelation 12, we get this view, this vision of a war that's in heaven. And I think this is a really powerful reminder for us that there is a spiritual realm, and in that spiritual realm, you are worth fighting for. You are worth fighting for. In Revelation 12, you get this image of what that battle is going to look like as God and his angels go to war for his creation and his people. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's jump right into Revelation 12, verse 1. A great portent appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. I'm sure it looked just like this, right? Maybe not, but I want you to notice in here the sun, I want you to notice that moon, and I want you to notice the stars. I think this lady is far too happy for what actually is going on. It looks probably a lot more like this because this woman is undergoing quite a thing, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. But I want you to notice the power of this woman and this situation. One of the things I love about this image is John continues a long, wonderful tradition in the New Testament of reminding us of the vital role of women. The vital role of women in the world, in creation, and even here in this spiritual realm. This is a woman of great power, and you might be wondering, who is this woman, or what does she represent? There's two theories on who this woman represents, okay? The first theory is this: she represents the bride, the representative of heavenly Jerusalem. And the reason she's got that 12-star crown is each one of those stars represents one of the 12 tribes of the tribes of Abraham, God's chosen people. So she is their representative. Second theory is this: she represents the church, and she is pregnant with the Messiah, waiting to become the bride of the Lamb. And again, remember, this is a symbolic thing. So she represents the church, the global church, not just Eastside, right, but the global church, holding on to the Messiah, holding on to a belief in Jesus, waiting, just waiting for his return to become the bride of the Lamb. Okay? So these are the two theories about who she is and who she represents. But the reason I want you to see the sun and the moon and the stars is those are really important images. They are now, but they were really important back then because these were images commonly used in mythology. Do we have any people who studied mythology in here? A couple of us? Okay, cool. So especially back then, everybody pretty much knew mythology. And there was a god with a lowercase g in charge of the sun and the moon and the stars. And John's message is, no. There's a God, one God, with a capital G, and he's in charge of the sun and the moon and the stars. Not Zeus, not Apollo, not Athena, not any of these other lowercase g gods. There's a big God. And he is the one who's in charge of the sun and the moon and the stars. And so these images are really important to this vision that he gives to John. Now, this vision he gives, it's a really important portent. This word here is semeion, and it means sign or mark, or I love this last part, a pointer to aid in perception. We're given these images, as interesting as they might be, to actually help us see. And because of John, he wrote them down and shared them. They help us see what God has in store for us and how much he cares about us. And we get this view of what's going on in this war in heaven over us. But before the war, this woman, like I said, she's probably not got a big, huge, happy, smiley face on, because in verse 2 we learn she was pregnant and was crying out in birth pangs, in the agony of giving birth. So here, this image again of what it might look like. This woman is undergoing something quite painful, quite incredible. And we have to remember this, that she is in great pain as she goes through this. Now, for any woman who's gone through this, you don't need the reminder, right? You don't need the reminder of all. As guys, we have no idea what this is like, that max 10 on the pain scale, right? But just because it's painful, you know well, that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's painful. Creation isn't easy. And I think this is a really important thing for us to remember. Creation is not an easy thing. Making children, God's creation of the world. We think about creating new things. Whenever you make things, there's a struggle. There's a tension. That doesn't mean it's bad, not at all. It just means there's a little bit of pain. There's a little bit of struggle. And this woman is going through great pain with about what is about to come out and who is going to come out. Verse 3. Then another portent appeared in heaven, a great red dragon, with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on his heads. So now you zoom out, and there's someone else in the birthing room with this woman, okay? And this someone else is terrifying. This great red dragon. And he is here for a very traumatic reason, but this dragon would have been very familiar to the people who first heard this from John. In fact, it's a fulfillment of a prophecy right out of the book of Daniel. Daniel 7:7. After this I saw in the visions by night a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth and was devouring, breaking in pieces, and stamping what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that preceded it, and it had 10 horns. So this dragon would have been a very familiar image for them that John describes for them in this vision. And he's got lots of 7s and 10s, right? Got 7 different heads, 10 horns, 7 diadems on those heads. And the reason for those numbers is these are numbers generally associated with completion. And we know that this dragon is completely evil, all bad, nothing good about this great red dragon. Verse 4, his tail swept down 1/3 of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. Then the dragon stood before the woman who was about to bear a child so that he might devour her child as soon as it was born. So now we see why this dragon is there. He wants to take out this child. And this is exactly what the enemy likes to do. The enemy loves to take us out early. There is a battle going on in the world for our children, folks. Our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. And this is why the children's ministry is one of the most important ministries of the church. Our church, every church. Because there's a battle. And Satan wants to pick every single one of us off early. And for those of you who work in that ministry, thank you. Because what you're doing is you're participating in this battle and saying, no, you're reminding these kids who they are. Who created them? Who loves them? Who died for them? And you're participating in this battle, pushing back on Satan. This also gives me a great chance to remind you guys of what's going on with those kids out at our Good News Club. We have started that club up out at Sunrise Elementary School. You should know that the size of that club has doubled since we started. This is huge. We got a group of kids that are coming every single Wednesday from 1:25 to 2:25. That's our time slot, right on the dot. And they come out, we get to preach the word. We get to sing with them in a public school. This is an incredible opportunity for you guys. And good things are happening. And I want to let you know, if you still want to participate, you can. You can still help, whether it's once a week or every other week or once a month maybe. That's fine. Come on out. You can teach them. You can sing with them. We sing with them. If you maybe a thing you're singing. If you just want to come out and sit next to one of these kids and remind them that they're loved, that there's an adult that cares about them, because some of them need to hear that. I would really encourage you guys, let me know, come find me, email me, call me, text me, say, Scott, I want to do this Good News Club thing. I want to go out there with you guys from 1:25 to 2:25 on a Wednesday. And I know it's hard for people who work during the day, and I get that. But if there's anyone else in here who wants to come out and participate, please let us know. It's an incredible opportunity for us to be out there and to remind these kids that there's a God who loves them very, very much. Verses 5 and 6. And she gave birth to a son, a male child, who's to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was snatched away and taken to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, so that there she can be nourished for 1,260 days. So this woman has this child, and the dragon is there, and yet fortunately God saves and rescues that son, and that son is the Messiah, the Savior, the promised one of God, and God saves and takes care of and protects that son. And the other thing we're told about this son, this little baby, is this baby is going to rule with a rod of iron, which is an interesting thing about when you think about Jesus and a baby, right? But we're told earlier in the Bible that's exactly how Jesus is going to rule, especially here in Revelation. Look at Psalm 2, 7-9. I'll tell of the decree of the Lord. He said to me, you're my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I'll make the nations your heritage and the ends of the earth your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron and dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. We have talked about this before in the book of Revelation. This is no weak Jesus, folks. This is a Jesus of incredible strength. And God here saves and rescues him after his birth. The other thing you should notice about where this woman flees to, she goes to the wilderness, which is a very normal place for people to go if they want to be saved. Old Testament, it shows up all the time, this traditional place of refuge. If you want examples, look at Exodus 2:15, 1 Kings 17:19. When God's people want to be saved, they take off and they go into the wilderness. I don't know about you guys, but this works for me every single time. Sometimes you just got to get away for God to nourish you. And I don't know what the wilderness looks like for you. For me, it's the woods. That's my cathedral. That's my spot. And I know he's going to be there. Maybe it's a beach. If it's a beach, go there. But go to a place where you know God can be there for you. And that's what this woman does, and this woman is nourished. I love this picture. God literally nourishes this woman who's just given birth to a child. And he nourishes her for 1,260 days. For those of you doing the math, that's about 3.5 years. This is that time period of tribulation. So remember who this woman represents. This is a reminder that God is going to watch over his people. 12 tribes, the church. He's going to watch over his people and nourish his people for the entire period of time of the tribulation. They're not going to be alone. God will nourish and provide for them even in that wilderness space while all of that tough stuff is going on. Now, the other thing you got to know about this story, and this is cool, I love this part. It's a reclaiming by John and God of a very familiar story. And those of you who are students of mythology, you've probably heard this one. Okay? There's a story about the Greco-Roman birth of Apollo. And there was this union, right, of Zeus and of Leto, and they came together and they had this child, but there was this other person who also wanted this child. And this person was a dragon, and his name was Python. And he desperately wanted to take this child. Sound familiar? Now in the story, Apollo takes that dragon out. He slew that dragon. But now look at the story that John's given us, that God has given us through John. This is a beautiful example, guys, of God using common stories that the people who heard them would be familiar with and saying, this isn't about Zeus, Leto, and Apollo. It's about God. It's about his son. And God's the one here who raises up that son and saves his son. This is an incredible biblical image of a principle we've talked about in here before. It comes right out of 2 Corinthians 10:3-5. We destroy arguments and every proud obstacle raised up against the knowledge of God, and we take every thought captive to obey Christ. What God and John are doing here is they're taking these thoughts, these stories about mythology, and they're taking them captive. They're saying, this isn't about that. It's about God. This is why we need to be able to address the thoughts and the stories that we hear on a regular basis in our culture, whether that's movies or books or short videos, whatever that is. We look at that and we say, no, this is really something that fits into the story of God. And God is in charge of this story. And God is in charge of this picture. And John and God do an incredible job here of capturing this story and put it into terms that give glory to him. Verses 7 and 8. And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. The dragon and his angels fought back, but they were defeated. And there was no longer any place for them in heaven. Just picture this giant war. This is like something straight out of a graphic novel, right? We've got these angels battling. We've got the dragon, and he's got his own angels battling, and they're battling over God's creation, over the earth, over you and for me. And remember these angels, folks. These are powerful warrior angels. These aren't weaklings. These aren't like, little chubby half-naked babies in diapers we put on our keychains. These are like terrifying, really powerful, really strong angels. These are the ones that show up, and the first thing they say is, don't be afraid. These are the ones that are truly looking out for you and for me, and here they're going to war for us. They're fighting for God and for his people. It's an incredible reminder that you are worth fighting for. And one of them is, of course, Michael. Michael has long been considered to be the protector of God's people. Comes back from Daniel 12:1. At that time, Michael, the great prince, the protector of your people, shall arise. There shall be a time of anguish, such as never occurred since nations first came into existence. But at that time, your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. So, of course, Michael is involved in protecting and looking out for God's people as part of this battle. And we know who wins. Verse 9, the great dragon was thrown down. That ancient serpent, who's called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. I love this image. Kind of puts things into perspective. I hereby sentence you to earth. It really puts earth in perspective. Like, this is not a place where the dragon would want to go, right? And he's thrown down, he's cast down to earth because he loses. And I picture Adam and Eve here like, yes! Like, take that, serpent. Take that. After what you did to us, after your involvement in lying to us in the garden and ruining our relationship with God, serpent, get out. God is in charge, and you are being cast down and put in your place. And remember who this serpent is. Remember who the devil is. And he's always been this. He's the father of lies. And when he's thrown down, this is exactly what we need to be doing with the lies that we hear about who we are. And I don't know what those lies are for you. Just talking to people literally between service about what those lies are for them. But it's awesome. We've got Teen Challenge here. The lies you might have heard about being an addict. And this is where we say, no, I am not. You are not who people have said you are. You are not how you might think you look. You are not the deceitful stuff that people have said about who you are. That's not coming from God. That's coming from Satan. And it belongs down here. Thrown down, stepped on, tramped on. Remember the truth about who you are. Child of God, one saved by Jesus Christ. You are not those things that Satan has been throwing at you for so long. Cast those down. Verse 10. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven proclaiming, now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our comrades has been thrown down, who accuses him day and night before our God. So notice how the serpent's described here as the accuser, who's accusing us day and night. And he's still doing this. He's doing this right now. But remember something about accusations. They're not necessarily true. Accusations may be true, but they may be false. And this is a reminder that the devil is an accuser. He's not a judge. He's an accuser. And he's throwing out these deceitful things, and you are not who the devil says you are. You are not. Regardless of who he's used to say those things, you are not. We need to remember as a people of God to rise above the false accusations of the father of lies and say, no, I'm created. I'm loved. I'm worth dying for. And anything else is nonsense. It belongs down on the ground, trampled on. Verse 11. But they've conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. For they did not cling to life even in the face of death. Verse 11 gives us a great recipe for how to conquer Satan. I want you to notice these three things. Want to conquer Satan? Do these three things. One, it's the blood of the Lamb that ultimately conquers Satan. In other words, it's not us. We can't do it on our own. It's a belief in Jesus Christ and what he did for us on the cross is the thing that conquers Satan. That part's done. Okay? Second part, the word of our testimony. In other words, as we go into the world and share the testimony of Jesus Christ, what he's done for us, we are taking shots at Satan. We are telling people who Satan might get a hold of that there is a God, he is real, he loves them, and he died for them. And every time we do that, we are taking a shot at Satan. Third thing is this: don't cling to life. Jesus puts this beautifully, right? If you want to save your life, lose it. Go figure, right? It's completely consistent with that. Don't cling to this life. Don't put all your hopes and your expectations and your dreams and goals just tied up in this life, this earth here. It's never ultimately going to fulfill you and give us complete and total joy. If we go down that road and if we pursue that, that's the root of great bitterness, disappointment, and frustration. And John is reminding us here, don't hold on to this life. There's something better than just this life. And as we do that, we push back on Satan, because that's what he wants us to do. He wants us to think that this life is it. And John is saying, no, there's something greater than this world and this life. Verse 12, rejoice then, you heavens and those who dwell in them, but woe to the earth and the sea. For the devil has come down to you with great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. Okay, so now we know that the devil, the serpent who was just lost, is coming down to earth. And you got to remember, this is his last chance. Picture this. The devil's last chance to get hold of everyone he can and pull them away from God. And he's now really, really mad, because he just lost. And so when he shows up on earth, he is going to be very, very angry, because it's his last chance to pull people away from God. But good news, keep reading verse 13. So when the dragon saw that he'd been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. Of course he does. That's what the devil does, right? Doesn't give up. Woman's been saved, child has been saved, and the devil's still going after her, and he is still going after you, and he is still going after me. But just because he doesn't give up, that means also we shouldn't give up either. We got to keep the fight going. And this looks like reading the Word. This looks like prayer. This looks like you guys being here this morning. This looks like us supporting each other, Christian brothers and sisters, against the fight, against this devil, because he's not going to quit until God takes him out. So know that he's not going to give up. But the good news is God doesn't give up either. Look at verse 14. But the woman was given the 2 wings of the great eagle, so that she could fly from the serpent into the wilderness to her place, where she's nourished for a time and times and half a time. I can only imagine what this looks like. This woman who's gone out to the wilderness, and God's nourished her, and now she's cast up, carried up on these incredible wings. Because God says, all right, the devil's not going to give up. I'm not giving up either. And he looks out for this woman. He cares for this woman. He lifts us up as well. This is a very familiar image, this idea of God and these wings of an eagle. Look at Exodus 19:4. You've seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. It's a very familiar image, this idea of taking us up on the wings of an eagle, being saved and rescued by our God, because the devil is going to lose. Verse 15. Then from his mouth the serpent poured water like a river after the woman to sweep her away with the flood. Now think about this for a second. All right? So I don't think it's going to look exactly like this, but when you picture a dragon, what comes out of a dragon's mouth? Fire, right? But here we got a dragon that's got water coming out, because what he's trying to do is flood this woman away. This is a very bizarre thing. But the good news, verse 16, but the earth came to the help of the woman. It opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured from his mouth. So the first thing I picture when I read this is this. Remember the rainbow? Right? That message that God's given us for all time says, I'm never going to flood the earth again and take all of you out. Not going to happen. And so the earth opens up, right? And a river is created. She's like, thanks, earth. Woo! Right? God is in charge of even this. And he uses this earth because this doesn't shock God at all. God is in charge of the earth now and when this all goes down. Nothing that's happening here surprises him. And we hear about all kinds of really traumatic, tragic stuff, large storms, right? Which are taking the lives of people. Really tough, painful stuff. None of that stuff is surprising to God. And we should continue to care. We should continue to take notice. We should continue to pray. But we should not be so concerned. And remember that God is in charge. None of this stuff surprises him. And he will use whatever happens on earth for his glory and for his good, and to take the enemy out at the end. Verse 17, and the dragon was angry with the woman, and went off to make war on the rest of her children, those who keep the commandments of God and hold the testimony of Jesus. Wait a minute. The dragon's angry with the woman? What'd the woman do to the dragon? Nothing, right? Just had this child. This is classic devil stuff. Angry with the wrong person. All right, show of hands. How many of you have ever been angry with the wrong person? Oh, you guys put your hands up way faster than first service. Good job. Good job. Right here at Founders, you're just like super mad, and you're like, wait a minute. They didn't even do it. It was that person, or it was me, right? And if we find ourselves in this place, that's exactly where the devil wants us. Angry with the wrong person. Because this ultimate battle, right? There's a war, and it's in heaven. It's a spiritual battle. It's above you and I. It's between God and between the devil. It's not between us and any other person. But when we make it about that, and we hold on to that anger, and that unforgiveness, and that resentment, and that bitterness, we're playing right into Satan's hands. It's where he wants us. Angry with the wrong person. We need to be angry with the devil, the serpent, and then rest and know that God is going to have him taken care of, all right? Verse 18. Then the dragon took his stand on the sand of the seashore. So the dragon's not done. He's taking his stand and he's on the seashore. Okay, and as we remember that, I want you to think about this. Don't sit this one out. This hasn't happened yet, but the devil is absolutely taking a stand today. He wants our kids, he wants you, and he wants me, and we shouldn't sit down for it. We shouldn't rest on this one. We need to participate in this battle, and this participation looks like reading the Word. It looks like doing what the Word says. It looks like praying to God, asking for protection from the evil one, and living out his mission in the world. This is our stand against the devil as he stands on the seashore. Now, the other thing you have to understand about how this is described, the sea here is described as an abyss. I don't think we think about this very much, but think about the sea or the ocean for a minute. It is 2/3 of this planet, and no one person has ever seen all of it. We know very little about it in its entirety, and most people don't even spend much time below it. It is the most mysterious part of the earth, but it's the majority of the earth. Now that's for us with all of our technology. We got everything from snorkeling gear and scuba gear to now large submarines and equipment that can go to the base. Imagine the people who heard this message from John. They were terrified of the ocean. Now, spoiler alert on the ocean, okay? When we get to Revelation 21 and we learn about new heaven and new earth, guess what's not included? Yeah, a sea or an ocean. There is no mention of a sea or an ocean that comes as part of that new creation. So the message is go scuba diving now, okay? There's some awesome stuff below the surface of the ocean. Go see it now, because we're told that when this happens later, we're not going to have that. This dragon is taking this stand besides this very mysterious and scary thing. All right, we're going to cover the next chapter next week. So what I want us to do now is prepare and take communion. I want you guys to think about, as you prepare your hearts to take communion during the next several songs. We talked about this stand. Devil's taken a stand. But Jesus has already taken that stand for us. And he did it on a cross. Let's think about that and pray about that before we take communion this morning. God, we thank you for Pacific Northwest Adult Teen Challenge. Every single program, especially the one that's out in Shed. We thank you for every person who leads out there, who teaches out there, every person who is being led out there. What's going on in their lives now, what they will do in the future as they step into the new life that they have for them. We thank you that they're there, so if we need to send people out their direction to learn who they are in you, that we have that place, God. We thank you also for this book of Revelation and all the images in it. As interesting and as unusual they may be, they are yours, and we thank you for it. And as we think about this war and this battle, we remember that you have already done the critical and pivotal part of that battle. When you sent your Son to the earth and allowed him to go to the cross for every person on this planet, every person you created ever. And so as we take communion, as we take the bread, we remember the body of Jesus Christ broken for us. As we take the cup of juice, we remember the blood of Jesus Christ poured out for all of us. And we say thank you for winning this battle for us. We love you, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.